What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the rear foot elevated split squat, also known as the Bulgarian split squat. In this exercise video, we're going to talk about the how-to, we're going to talk about the muscles work, the benefits, and then some variation and programming tips for this exercise. Step 1 of the rear foot elevated split squat is establishing your base. So you're going to find an implement to put the back foot onto. Now you can either lay it down flat or have the toe dug up and actually active and gripping the floor. That's going to vary depending on the surface you're on. Now when it comes to that front leg, you're going to put it far enough away from that implement so you can get a full range of motion, but the heel doesn't come off the ground and then you come onto the toe. So that's going to vary from lifter to lifter depending on how long your legs are and how tall you are. So those are the two fundamentals for establishing the back and front foot position. Step 2 is the active brace and eccentric loading pattern. So you're going to lightly brace. You're not going to take a full brace as if you were squatting, but you are going to have some tension throughout the torso, and that's going to depend on the implement you're holding and how much you're going to need to brace. Now, once you've done this, you're going to start the eccentric loading pattern. So you're going to slowly lower yourself down, thinking about going straight down. So think as if you're in an elevator. You're going up and down. There's no forward or backwards movements here. So you're going to slowly lower down until you transition to the concentric movement pattern, which is step 3. So something that newbies kind of mess up with this exercise is that they think about engaging both legs, so they almost pull the back leg in and push to that front leg, and that can actually be counterproductive for what this movement is trying to train. So think about going up and down in that direct line and really driving through that front leg and pushing through those quads. Now at the top, generally speaking, for most folks, locking out will actually throw them out of position. So if you're in a soft lockout position, that's perfectly acceptable. Generally speaking, if you can only hit a soft lockout, that's perfectly fine. What's most important is that you're really driving through that quad to generate the force through the ground, through the knee extension portion, so the standing portion, and you're keeping that quad engaged throughout with the hips also engaged so the glutes are turned on. So when it comes to muscles worked for the rear foot elevated split squat, the primary movers are going to be the quadriceps. So your vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, and rectus femoris will all be targeted with this exercise. You're also going to have some glute involvement due to the hip extension throughout various ranges of motion. So your glute maximus and glute medius will also be active. So something that's nice about this exercise is that it also targets the hamstrings throughout various ranges of motion. So your semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and biceps femoris will get some work as well. In fact, a study published in 2019 in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that the rear foot elevated split squat had a higher hamstring to quad activation ratio compared to the traditional split squat and the single leg squat. So if your goal is targeting the leg muscles as a whole, the rear foot elevated split squat is a great movement to do so. That's probably why a lot of people associate this exercise with pain and suffering. So when it comes to benefits for the rear foot elevated split squat, there are 3 main benefits that come to mind. Number 1 is that it doesn't take a lot to make this movement burn. So whether you have equipment or you're using your own body weight, you can change up your tempo, you can slow down and add pauses, and this movement will be tough. And it's very easy to scale with different implements like kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells, and so forth. The second benefit is that this is a great exercise for training the lower body as a whole. As stated in the muscle section, if you want to train the quads, hamstrings, and glutes, the rear foot elevated split squat is an awesome exercise to do so. Now the third benefit is going to be more for people who don't have a barbell or wish to back squat. So this movement can replace the back squat when loading is appropriate and when you take your overall programming into account. So what do I mean by this? In a study published in 2014, authors suggested that the rear foot elevated split squat was comparable to the back squat when it comes to lower body muscle activation. Now, again, that doesn't mean if you want to get really great at the back squat, you can just replace it with the rear foot elevated split squat. It means that if you're ever in a bind and you can't back squat, for example, you can swap in the rear foot elevated split squat, and it might be comparable when it comes to muscle activation. So whether you're on the road, traveling, and so forth, it could be a great alternative to the back squat if you just simply cannot perform a back squat in whatever setting you're at. So when it comes to variations for this exercise, as opposed to changing the height of the back leg, change the implement you're using. So use 2 dumbbells, 2 kettlebells, a barbell, and a back squat, front squat, exert your position. Use a single dumbbell or kettlebell, hold that in the front rack, hold it on a strong side, off side. There's so many different options you can do when using different implements for this exercise. And that's how I think you should scale variations for the rear foot elevated split squat, because those implements can change certain adaptations. For example, holding a single dumbbell or kettlebell in the offset side of the hand, so the side that you're not performing the actual split squat on, that's gonna add a level of anti-rotation, so there's gonna be a little bit more oblique work with that implement. Now, when it comes to programming this exercise, generally speaking, folks will put them higher in their workout just because they are slightly more demanding and fatiguing exercise. However, it really comes down to the intensity, sets, and reps you're performing them with. So just be a little bit more mindful of where you're plugging in the rear foot elevated split squat. And again, as mentioned in benefit 3, if you do want to replace, let's say, a back squat day with a rear foot elevated split squat and take them a little bit heavier, might not be a terrible idea when it comes to muscle activation. However, again, it's going to come down to your goals and needs. So when it comes to programming this exercise, be mindful of your overall fatigue levels and how intense you're performing them, and plug them into your workouts accordingly. And that wraps up our rear foot elevated split squat guide. As you can see, I'm in a little bit of a different setting today. I am at home in Missouri. We are not in the Brooklyn, New York office for BarBend. We're all working remote, but hopefully you took something away from this exercise video. If you want to learn more on this movement and some of the more logistical approaches to this exercise, check out the guide below. I've written a full in-depth article. I highly recommend checking it out. So seriously, check it out below.